right, hi everyone. I'm Alice from House of CK. I'm joined here with Wes, who's part of the DevRel team at Eigen Layer. I'm really excited to have you here today and chat with you, Wes.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Lovely event so far. I really appreciate it. All the logistics and the folks we met are just top notch. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very curious actually to hear about your origin story in the space. So what first got you into the Web3 space and also into Eigen Layer?
Right. So in 2013 timeframe, I started hearing about this open source crypto project named Bitcoin, and I was working very heavily in distributed database systems like Hadoop and MapReduce and all that. And it was interesting because, there's a lot of open source projects that come and go. And it was funny because Bitcoin was one of the first monetized Bitcoin or crypto or database projects, distributed ledger. And so I started following about this is kind of fun, like maybe I'll, buy some Bitcoin or whatever. But knowing a lot of open source projects, I know that most of them just aren't successful over time. It's very hard for them to become successful. So it was funny to see how that became a success. And then eventually followed Ethereum, became a proof of work miner back in 2016, 2017. So during the day, I was doing Web 2 stuff at like Google Cloud and these database companies. But in the evening, I was kind of like a miner and tried to participate however I could. And then eventually in 2020, I had to leave Web 2 because there was so much success happening in Web 3 space. And, at the same time, all the success that was happening was within the EVM. And I came from this world where there's a lot of the big systems, the social media systems, YouTube, they all require heavy off-chain compute. And so I wanted to just play a small part in the community and helping expand Web3 and crypto beyond just what can fit into the EVM. So I was fortunate to be able to work at Protocol Labs for about a year on decentralized compute, off-chain compute. And then eventually found out about this idea of restaking, which is sort of Eigen Layer and how it sort of enables folks to incentivize all different kinds of off-chain services. And I thought, well, wow, like most Web3 projects should have some version of restaking involved, and been with them for about a year and a half helping folks. So
Awesome. Yeah, it's really great how you first started within like distributed databases and then also within Bitcoin and then kind of moved to off-chain compute and now with Eigen Layer. So quite a journey there for the past, 12-ish years?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of coming full circle, which is pretty cool to see. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
And then also, I was curious to hear more about some of the value propositions that EigenLayer provides. So, what the proposition is for developers to build using ABS infrastructure, and the kind of advantages that they get from what
Yeah.
they're.
Yeah, the value proposition, the way I phrase it is that anybody who's building a new Web3 project, their idea on their own is extremely valuable and extremely special. But launching that idea as a decentralized project is very difficult. And a lot of people start out with, we're going to build this new social media app, but we have to start with some systems running on Amazon or centralized systems because it's hard. It's hard to build complex systems fully in Web3 today. And so what EigenLayer does is it helps accelerate people building those off-chain services, because often what happens to build those services is on a proof of stake network, you have to launch a lot of capital to secure the network. You have to launch a lot of operators to run those services on your behalf. And so EigenLayer is sort of decentralization as a service. We bring all those things for the developer. They bring their app and their idea, and they write it as a validated service within EigenLayer. And then we have the operators that want to run that service. We have the capital that wants to be associated with it to restake for slashing in rewards. And so at the highest level, it's taking ideas that people have that are fun for Web3 and helping them decentralize faster with less effort, so they can focus their time on their secret sauce and not all the mechanics of associated capital and staking.
Got it. And I wanted to also, just on that topics, talk to you more about the developer experience as well. So what do you see as kind of the current limitations or barriers that a lot of developers currently face? Maybe some gaps in current tooling or current kinds of infrastructure that you're using, and how you see EigenLayer addressing that kind of gap.
Yeah, I'll give you my personal opinion. I think there's like a wide variety. I won't speak on behalf of EigenLayer. New developers especially, they come from Vercel, AWS, Microsoft Cloud, Google Cloud, and they have this big palette of options to choose from. They can run compute on the servers, they can do database, they can run AI inference, they can have all these great things. And it's very easy to build these really powerful apps from scratch. But when they come to the Web3 world and they look at the options available, it's difficult. It's somewhat limited. You know, there's some compute solutions, there's some file storage solutions, and they're very disparate and they're, you know, sort of operating on their own cadence. What I would love to see is for new developers coming in, they have that experience in AWS or the Web2 cloud today. They come into Web3 and they have similar, equally easy to use solutions. And that's kind of what I think I would like for us to be able to help empower is you know, the person that's going to build the database solution or the compute solution, make it easy for them to launch. So we have this plethora of all these services. Our CEO sometimes uses the term software as a service, like in Web2, you know, you've got like Salesforce and you've got all these, like I need payroll as a service, whatever, and you can plug those in, you can build a business. Well, in Web3, we like to have the same sort of scenario where you've got, you know, compute, database, AI, and you can just plug those in. So we want to help foster the growth of all those services.
Yeah, great. So it's really good that you kind of have that almost like a plug and play adoption as well for these developers, making their lives as easy as possible. And just some general questions about what you see the ZK landscape is right now and some of the opportunities that can be utilized. What are some both challenges and also new opportunities that you see in the space right now?
Well, I have to say, you know, the ZK community is so impressive because, you know, a lot of what we do in Eigen Layer relies on ZK technology. So when people build these services on Eigen Layer, they can design them however they want. The services run off-chain, trustless native operators. But there always needs to be some validation back on chain. So whatever those people do off-chain, you would validate it back on chain. And there's different technologies like fully homomorphic encryption. There's trusted execution environments. But ZK proofs and ZK technology is one of the best because it is deterministic. It's guaranteed that operation ran off chain. So we love the ZK community. It's a great source of raw materials for people to build services on. And I think the ZK community has done so well at, you know, building the existing capability to write ZK circuits. There's all these new ZK VMs coming out to make it easier for folks to build, particularly if you're a Rust developer and things like that. I think there's the two opportunities that stand out to me. One is obviously AI, like ZKML is a growing space, and being able to do more with ZKML would be fantastic. There's a lot of smart people investing in that space. And also, just selfishly, I think expanding to other languages, we're getting first-class support. So Rust gets a lot of love in the ZK community. Rust is a fantastic language. But also Go and TypeScript or JavaScript, because there's so many developers that come from a web development background, and helping onboard them into this community could be good as well. But there's a lot of smart folks working on it. So we'll get there, I'm sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a big trend I see in the ZK space right now where I'm trying to really focus on that developer experience. So not letting developers, you know, build circuits directly or having to learn new programming language in order to build these kinds of applications, but instead they can use languages that they're already familiar with, like with Rust, and hopefully maybe with some other languages like Go or with Move or with even Solidity, already familiar languages, and then be able to deploy these ZK applications without having to know like a bunch of like the cryptography, say, around ZK.
Yes, that's it. I think just building layers of abstraction on top of it, I mean, that's what the community does well. You know, like there's demand for that, and there's smart engineers that can build these things. So I think over time we'll see more of those bridges being built. Yeah.
And you did mention about some of the other kinds of tools that we're seeing in the space, like with trusted execution environments, with like FHE, for example, and there's also MPC becoming really popularized nowadays. Do you see, just like your personal predictions, do you see us using a combination of all of these approaches, so ZK with MPC and TE as well as FHE, maybe depending on the type of use case that's being built, or do you see maybe one of these tools dominating in the future?
That's a great question, a great topic. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's absolutely a combination of these things, because really, you know, thinking about like building services in Eigen Layer or trustless decentralized services, the goal in many ways is to make it trustless and secure enough so that malicious actors can't take advantage of the system. That's kind of like the goal, effectively, so that it can operate, you know, altruistically or as users want. And I see a lot of really smart developers on our platform layering these technologies together. I think that's fantastic because in certain situations, like I'll give you a good example, trusted execution environments. There have been instances in the past where these secure enclaves on Intel chips have been hacked and shown, there's, and you have to think, how likely is it for someone to hack a given trusted enclave? Maybe, I don't know, 0.1% or some very low amount. Well, then also, if you can combine that with a different technology that is equally, difficult to hack, like MPC, okay, then you get like very high levels of security. And then if you can have any portion of that architecture ZK proven, maybe not the whole thing, but some portion of it, you're adding layers of security to some point where you have enough security that the end user is like, this is way more secure than I need for this use case, which is great. And I think, depending on the use case, if you're managing a lot of money for your service, swaps and bridges and such, you may want a lot of security. If you're doing fun things like generating AI images for whatever, you may need a little security so people can choose as they're building their services too.
Yeah, definitely providing that choice depending on your needs, depending on the type of use case, whether or not you want to value, say, like the security over maybe how fast that ZK could be generated, or in terms of like scalability wise, there's kind of that trade-off play. But providing developers and users with that choice, I think, is always a great approach.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of just use cases and applications, are there any types of ZK use cases that you find particularly exciting, or even some applications being built on Eigen Layer that you find really promising?
Yes. Oh, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, so one thing that comes up a lot is this identity question, which is great fodder because, whether it's like proof of humanity, proof of personhood, it becomes up a lot in conversations. There's so much that people want to do in the crypto community with trusted humans. And then more broadly, I think, on the Eigen Layer side, right now we see a lot of AI investment, like AI use cases and these sorts of things, whether it's an agent acting on behalf of a human, validating what the agent is doing. Also, even like validating that it is in fact an agent and not a human taking over, like the opposite of proof of humanity, is very interesting. Because, if his agentic use cases develop the way we want to, we'll give more authority to them and control over our assets and things like that. So I think those use cases, we spend a lot of time with folks that are building these sort of like AI inference use cases, AI training use cases. I think that could power a lot of what we do in the future. And I hope that, it's asking a lot sometimes for the ZK community to provide that, because these are such big computations. But if the ZK community can be more of a part of that, I think that will be fantastic. Because if it can be proven on chain, it opens up a lot more use cases, a lot more financial use cases and things like that for users too. So yeah.
Even beyond just like what we see in Web3 as well. So
Yeah.
we've been merging but two applications to use ZK as well.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a really good example of an application using ZK TLS that we like to run with one of our builders named Opacity that's built an AVS on Eigen Layer. And basically the premise is that they have a series of taxi drivers who want to sign up to operate as a taxi service, onboarding to new service. But in order to do that, they have to take data from their Uber profiles. You have to have 5 treasuries. So they use ZK TLS to prove this person is a validated driver. And that's a great example of like a very Web 2 use case, but it's using these like ZK Web 3 technologies. So I think there's a lot of potential there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, we're finally at that state where we can even have Web2 applications be onboarded into the space. So we're not just, constrained to our own bubble of this Web3, but we instead see some more onboarding, which I find really exciting. But just as a last question before we close, are there any kinds of, say, predictions of how you see the space evolving in the next couple of years? Or if you want to focus on the shorter term, what can members of our audience expect on Eigen Layer's side if some builders want to get involved?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think one really fun area that we're investing a lot in is this concept of subjective services. There's many things in this space that Eigen Layer is all about validating off-chain activities on-chain in a trustless way. But there's many things that might happen that may not be easily validated. So AI inference is a good example. Like if you have a service, let's say it's an AVS service, and the service is the purpose is to generate cat images. But it turns out one of the operators, instead of generating a cat image, it looks more like a dog. And so it's kind of obvious to you that it looks like a dog, but really it's supposed to generate cat images. And so it's like, maybe they were behaving maliciously or something. So to validate that on chain is difficult. It's difficult to generate a ZK proof that this is a cat versus a dog. It's kind of a subjective opinion. However, we're trying to invest a lot in this idea of giving the service builder the ability to fork their tokens according to these subjective decisions. And I think if you can combine the power of all these different types of subjective operations with provable deterministic ZK use cases, you can come up with some really powerful combined use cases. And hopefully we can provide that for the community. I think that'll open up a lot for just verifiability in general.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting to see that kind of intersection with the subjective options and also the ZK uses as well. So seeing that kind of merge, I think is very exciting. So
Yeah. Most definitely.
But yeah, thank you so much, Wes, for joining us today, for speaking about both Eigen Layer and your take on ZK. Yeah, I really appreciate all the insights, and thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you for letting me join.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right.
All right, thank you. Our coverage at NOIRCON. Really incredible to see all of the tremendous strides that the Aztec team is making, as well as all the other teams from the interviews we had today. Really, we're in such a great time to be able to see this transition from theory and research to building real applications, especially within privacy preserving applications. But until then, we'll see you next time.